The yellow Labrador named Biscuit yanked the leash so hard that Maya nearly dropped her phone, and she laughed as the dog spotted a squirrel darting up an oak tree across from the sleek glass building, where, unbeknownst to her, someone had started watching for her arrival every single morning at exactly 8:15. Maya Chen had been walking dogs professionally for 3 years now, ever since she'd left her soul-crushing marketing job to do something that actually made her happy. Her mother thought she was crazy, trading a steady paycheck for what she called playing with puppies, but Maya had never been happier. Sure, her apartment was tiny, and her savings account made her wince, but she woke up every morning excited about her day. That had to count for something. She had 6 regular clients, which meant 6 walks per day, 5 days a week. The route was carefully planned to maximize efficiency while giving each dog the exercise they needed. Biscuit was her first walk of the day, followed by 2 French bulldogs named Quas and Baguette, then a nervous rescue mutt called Pepper, an ancient beagle who moved at glacial speed, and finally a hyperactive border collie who needed a solid hour of running. The route past the Carmichael building had become part of her routine about 2 months ago, when she'd picked up Biscuit as a client. His owners lived in the renovated lofts on 5th Street, and the most direct path to the dog park cut right past the modern architecture of the business district. Maya barely noticed the buildings anymore. They were just part of the landscape, glass and steel reaching toward the sky while she focused on keeping Biscuit from eating everything he found on the sidewalk. What she didn't know was that Alexander Carmichael, founder and CEO of Carmichael Industries, one of the largest sustainable energy companies in the country, had noticed her immediately. Alexander stood at the floor-to-ceiling window of his corner office on the 23rd floor, coffee in hand, watching the morning crowd shuffle past below. He'd been doing this for years, taking a moment before the chaos of his day began to simply observe the world moving. It was meditative in its own way, watching strangers live their lives, each one with their own story he'd never know. Then one Tuesday morning he saw her. A woman with dark hair pulled into a messy ponytail, wearing jeans and a green jacket, being pulled along by an enthusiastic yellow lab. She was laughing at something, her whole face lit up with genuine joy, and even from 23 floors up, Alexander felt something shift in his chest. She moved through the morning rush with an ease that suggested she knew exactly where she belonged in the world, and that confidence was magnetic. He checked his watch. 8:17. He filed that information away without really knowing why. The next morning, he found himself at the window at 8:15, coffee growing cold in his hand as he waited. And there she was again, same time, same yellow lab. This time she was talking on her phone, gesturing animatedly with her free hand while the dogs sniffed every tree they passed. By the end of the week, Alexander had admitted to himself that he was actively watching for her. It was ridiculous. He was 33 years old, ran a company worth billions, and had been featured in Forbes 3 times. He didn't moon over strangers from his office window like some lovesick teenager. And yet every morning at 8:15, there he was. His assistant Patricia noticed after 2 weeks. She'd worked for him for 5 years and knew his habits better than he did. New morning routine. She asked, setting his schedule on his desk while glancing at him standing by the window. "Just thinking," Alexander said, not moving from his position. Patricia followed his gaze down to the street, then checked her watch. "Thinking about anything in particular, or anyone?" "Don't you have things to do?" "Many things, but this is more interesting." She smiled, a knowing look on her face. "You should go down and say hello." I'm not going to ambush a random woman on the street, Patricia. Wave then. People wave. It's friendly. Alexander shot her a look, but she just shrugged and left his office, closing the door behind her with a soft click. The idea was absurd. Wave at someone 23 floors below who probably couldn't even see him. But the thought lodged itself in his brain and wouldn't leave. The next morning, when she appeared with the yellow lab, Alexander raised his hand and waved, feeling completely foolish. She didn't notice. Of course she didn't. But he did it again the next day. And the day after that. 3 weeks into his daily waving routine, something changed. The woman had stopped, the lab sniffing around a small planted tree, and she'd tilted her head back to look up at the building. Alexander's heart actually jumped in his chest, and he waved with more enthusiasm than he'd intended. Maya had felt watched for weeks, but kept dismissing it as paranoia. Then Biscuit had gotten interested in a particularly fascinating smell, and she'd found herself stopped right in front of the Carmichael building for longer than usual. On impulse, she'd looked up at the wall of windows rising above her, and there, unmistakably, was a figure in one of the high windows, waving. She couldn't make out any details from this distance, but the movement was clear. Someone was waving at her. Maya glanced around to make sure they weren't waving at someone else, but the sidewalk had momentarily cleared. She lifted her hand in a tentative wave back. The figure in the window waved more enthusiastically, and despite herself, Maya smiled. "Well, Biscuit," she said to the dog, who was now finished with his investigation, "looks like we've made a friend." The next morning, Maya found herself actually looking up at the building as she approached. Sure enough, there was movement in the same window and the person was waving. She waved back, feeling silly but also oddly charmed. This became part of her routine. Every morning she'd walk past with Biscuit, look up, wave at the stranger in the window, and continue on her way. After a week of mutual waving, Maya started to get curious. Who was this person? What did they do that they could spend time every morning waving at random dog walkers? She mentioned it to her best friend Sophie over dinner one night. "It's probably some lonely office worker who hates their job," Sophie suggested, twirling pasta on her fork. "You're the highlight of their morning. That's kind of sad. Or romantic. Could be romantic, maybe he's handsome. I have no idea if it's even a he. Woman's intuition. I'm betting it's a he, and I'm betting he's interested." Maya rolled her eyes. "He's 20-something floors up in a building I'll never enter. I don't think romance is in the cards." But she'd be lying if she said she wasn't thinking about it. There was something sweet about the daily ritual, a moment of connection with a stranger that required nothing but a simple gesture. In a city where everyone was usually too busy to make eye contact, it felt special. Alexander was running out of patience with himself. 2 months of waving at a woman whose name he didn't know, whose voice he'd never heard, whose face he could barely make out from his office window. It was driving him crazy, and he knew he needed to do something about it. "Just go down there," Patricia said for the 100th time, this time standing in his office with her arms crossed like a disappointed mother. "Tomorrow morning, go down to the street and introduce yourself like a normal person. I can't just approach her out of nowhere. That's creepy. You've been waving at her from a window for 2 months. The creepy ship has sailed, Alexander. At this point, actually talking to her would be the normal thing to do." He knew she was right, but the thought made his stomach twist with nerves he hadn't felt since his first business pitch years ago. With business, he knew what he was doing. He could read a room, anticipate objections, close a deal. But this This was completely different territory. What if she's not interested? Then you'll survive, you'll move on, and you'll stop spending every morning glued to that window like a sad Victorian ghost. Patricia softened her tone. You're a good guy, Alexander. You've just forgotten how to be a person outside of work. This is good for you. Go talk to her. That night, Alexander barely slept. He rehearsed various opening lines in his head, each one sounding more ridiculous than the last. By the time morning came, he'd given up on planning and decided to just wing it. He put on jeans and a casual button-down instead of his usual suit, told Patricia he'd be late, and at 8 o'clock, he took the elevator down to the ground floor. The lobby felt surreal at this hour. He was usually already at his desk by this time, deep into emails and morning meetings. Now he stood near the entrance, watching the street through the glass doors, feeling his pulse hammer in his throat. 8:15 came and went. 8:20. 8:25. Had she changed her route? Had he somehow missed her? Alexander was about to give up when he finally saw the yellow lab appear around the corner, pulling a woman behind him with determined enthusiasm. Alexander stepped outside before he could second-guess himself. Maya noticed the man immediately because he was standing still in the middle of the morning rush, looking directly at her. He was tall, with dark hair slightly mussed like he'd run his hands through it repeatedly, wearing jeans and a blue shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows. Handsome, she noted absently, really handsome, and he was watching her with an expression that was equal parts nervous and determined. Biscuit, never one to pass up a chance to meet someone new, pulled toward the man with his tail wagging. "Hi," the man said, and his voice was deeper than Maya had expected, warm and a little breathless. "I'm Alexander. I'm the person who's been waving at you from the window." Maya's eyes widened as understanding clicked into place. She looked up at the Carmichael building, then back at him, a smile spreading across her face. "The 23rd floor. That's the one." He crouched down to greet Biscuit, who was very excited about this new friend. "I'm sorry if this seems weird. It is weird. But I've been waving at you for 2 months, and I realized I should probably actually introduce myself like a normal person." "I'm Maya," she said, charmed by his nervousness. Here was this clearly put-together man, stammering over his words because he'd worked up the courage to come say hello. "And this is Biscuit, who loves literally everyone he meets, so don't feel too special." Alexander laughed, the tension in his shoulders relaxing slightly. "I'll try not to let it go to my head." He straightened up, meeting her eyes properly for the first time. They were brown and bright with amusement, and seeing her face up close rather than from 23 floors up made his chest feel tight. "This is going to sound crazy, but would you like some company on your walk? I mean, you're clearly working, so I understand if that's weird or inappropriate, but I'd really like to talk to you, and I don't know when I'll get another chance." Maya should have said no. She was working, and she didn't know this man, and Sophie's voice in her head was screaming about stranger danger. But there was something genuine in his expression, something vulnerable about the way he was looking at her, like she might break his heart with her answer. "Sure," she found herself saying. "I'm heading to the dog park 4 blocks down. You're welcome to walk with us." The relief on Alexander's face was almost comical. "Thank you, really." They started walking, Biscuit happily leading the way, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The morning traffic hummed around them, and Maya tried to think of something to say that didn't sound ridiculous. "So," she started, "you work in that building?" "I do. I own the company, actually." "Carmichael Industries." Maya's steps faltered slightly. "Carmichael Industries." She knew that name. Everyone knew that name. It was one of the biggest sustainable energy companies in the world, revolutionizing solar technology and battery storage, which meant Alexander wasn't just some office worker watching from a window. He was a billionaire. "Oh," she said, her voice coming out smaller than she'd intended. "That's impressive." "It's just work," Alexander said quickly, sensing her shift in demeanor. "I started the company 8 years ago, and it grew faster than I expected. But it's not who I am, if that makes sense. It's what I do." Most people would say those are the same thing. "Are they for you?" He glanced at her, genuinely curious. "Is dog walking who you are?" Maya thought about it as they crossed the street, Biscuit stopping to sniff a fire hydrant. "No, I guess not. I'm a person who walks dogs for a living, which is different. I used to work in marketing, but I hated it. Waking up every morning and walking dogs makes me happy, even if it doesn't make me rich." "Happiness is underrated," Alexander said quietly. "I've spent years building something successful, and it's satisfying. But I can't remember the last time I did something just because it made me happy." They reached the dog park, a small fenced area with benches and a water fountain. Maya unclipped Biscuit's leash, and he immediately bounded off to investigate everything. She sat on one of the benches, and Alexander joined her, careful to leave a respectful distance between them. "Why did you start waving?" Maya asked, turning to face him. "Was it just boredom, or was there something else?" Alexander rubbed the back of his neck, a gesture she was starting to recognize as nervousness. "Honest answer. I saw you laughing one morning, and you looked so genuinely happy that it stopped me in my tracks. I've been watching the street from my office for years, and everyone always looks miserable or stressed or just zoned out. But you were different. You looked like you were exactly where you wanted to be, doing exactly what you wanted to do. I guess I was drawn to that." Maya felt her cheeks warm. "I almost fell on my face that morning." Biscuit saw a squirrel and yanked the leash. "I was laughing at myself." "Still counts." He smiled, and it transformed his entire face, making him look younger and less like a corporate billionaire. "So I started watching for you every morning. It became the best part of my day, which sounds pathetic when I say it out loud, but it's true. Seeing you wave back made me feel like I was part of the world instead of just observing it from behind glass." There was something achingly lonely in that admission, and Maya felt her heart squeeze. "That doesn't sound pathetic. It sounds human." They talked for the full 30 minutes that Biscuit played, conversation flowing easier than Maya would have expected. Alexander asked about her other dogs, and she told him about Quas and Baguette's ongoing rivalry, Pepper's anxiety around other dogs, and the beagle who moved so slowly. She sometimes wondered if he was actually walking or just standing still in different locations. He laughed at her stories, genuine and unguarded, and Maya found herself liking him more with every passing minute. "I have to get to my next client," she finally said, calling Biscuit back and clipping on his leash. "But this was really nice." "Can I walk with you tomorrow?" Alexander asked, standing up. "Same time." Maya hesitated, but only for a second. "Yeah, I'd like that." His smile was worth everything. The next morning, Alexander was waiting outside his building at 8:10, wearing jeans and a gray Henley, looking nervous and eager. Maya couldn't help but smile when she saw him, and Biscuit practically dragged her over to greet his new friend. They fell into an easy rhythm. Every morning, Alexander would be waiting, and they'd walk to the dog park together, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up in Seattle, how he'd started his company in a garage with 2 college friends, and a dream of making renewable energy accessible to everyone. She told him about her family, immigrants from Taiwan who'd built a life in America, and couldn't understand why their daughter had thrown away a perfectly good career to play with dogs. "They mean well," Maya said one morning, a week into their daily walks. "They just want me to be secure." "But you are secure," Alexander pointed out. "Maybe not financially in the way they'd prefer, but you're secure in knowing what makes you happy. That's rarer than you think." By the second week, Alexander had started joining her for the second walk of the day too, with Croissant and Baguette. The French bulldogs loved him immediately, and Maya teased him about being a dog whisperer. "They just know I'm pathetically desperate for approval," he joked, scratching Baguette behind the ears. "You're a billionaire CEO. I think you get plenty of approval. That's different. People approve of what I've accomplished, not who I am." He looked at her seriously. "You didn't even know who I was when you agreed to let me walk with you. I knew you were the person who waved from the window. That was enough." Something passed between them in that moment, something warm and significant that Maya felt all the way to her toes. By the third week, Maya had to acknowledge that she was falling for him. It was there in the way her heart jumped when she saw him waiting each morning, in how she found herself telling him things she rarely shared with anyone, in the disappointment she felt on weekends when she wouldn't see him. She tried to be rational about it. He was a billionaire and she walked dogs. They lived in different worlds. This was probably just a novelty for him, something to break up the monotony of his routine. But then he'd look at her with those blue eyes full of warmth and genuine interest, and rationality went out the window. Alexander knew he was in trouble. He'd rearranged his entire schedule around these morning walks, pushing meetings to later in the day and delegating more than he ever had before. Patricia was thrilled, saying it was good for him to step back, but Alexander knew the truth. He was making space in his life for Maya, hoping desperately that she'd want to fill it. He'd dated before, of course, but every relationship had felt like a performance, with him playing the role of Alexander Carmichael, successful CEO, rather than just being himself. With Maya, he could talk about his fears and doubts, admit when he didn't know something, laugh at himself without worrying about maintaining some kind of image. She saw him as just Alexander, the guy who waved from a window, and that was freeing in a way he hadn't experienced before. One morning during the fourth week, as they sat in the dog park watching Biscuit chase butterflies, Alexander made a decision. "Maya, can I take you to dinner?" She turned to him, surprise evident on her face. "Like a date." Exactly like a date. His heart was hammering, but he kept his voice steady. "I know we've only known each other for a month, but I really like you. Not just as a walking companion, but as someone I want to spend more time with. Away from dogs, though I like the dogs too." Maya bit her lip, clearly thinking. "Alexander, I need to be honest with you. I really like you too, but I'm worried about the differences between us. You're a billionaire. I live in a studio apartment and eat ramen twice a week. Those are very different lives. So, my life isn't better just because I have more money. Different doesn't mean incompatible." "Doesn't it though?" She looked down at her hands. "What happens when your friends or family meet me? When they ask what I do and I say I walk dogs? Or when you want to go somewhere fancy and I can't afford it? Then I pay for it. And if anyone has a problem with what you do, they can answer to me." He reached out and gently turned her face toward him. "Maya, I've spent 8 years building a company and accumulating more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes. None of it made me as happy as these morning walks with you. If you think money is what matters, you haven't been paying attention." She searched his face, looking for doubt or insincerity and finding none. "One dinner, let's see how it goes." His smile was brilliant. "One dinner, I promise to make it worth your while." Alexander made reservations at a restaurant he knew was nice but not ostentatious, somewhere they could actually talk without too much formality. He picked her up at 7, and when she opened her door wearing a simple black dress that somehow made her more beautiful than he'd imagined, he forgot every smooth thing he'd planned to say. "You look amazing," he managed. "You clean up pretty well yourself," she said, taking in his dark suit and tie. The restaurant was perfect, intimate and warm with soft lighting and excellent food. They talked through 3 courses, conversation flowing as easily as it did on their morning walks. Alexander told her about the pressure of running a company, the weight of thousands of employees depending on his decisions, the loneliness of being at the top with no one who really understood. Maya told him about the freedom of working for herself, the terror of unstable income, the joy of building relationships with her clients, both human and canine. "I think you're braver than I am," Alexander said as they shared a dessert. "You left security to chase happiness. I've never done that. I've always played it safe, built everything step by careful step. That's not playing it safe. You started a company from nothing. That takes courage. It's different. I had a plan, investors, calculations. You jumped without a net. And almost broke my neck several times," Maya laughed. "It's not always as romantic as it sounds. There have been months where I've had to borrow money from my parents, which is humiliating when they already think I made a mistake. But you're still doing it. That's the brave part." Walking back to her apartment, Alexander reached for her hand. She let him take it, their fingers intertwining naturally. At her door, she turned to face him, and the air between them felt charged with possibility. "I had a really good time tonight," Maya said softly. "Good enough for a second date." "Yeah, I think so." Alexander smiled. Then slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, he leaned in and kissed her. It was soft and sweet, a question more than a statement, and when Maya kissed him back, her hands coming up to rest on his chest, he felt something slot into place in his heart. They started really dating after that, fitting together in a way that surprised both of them. Alexander joined her morning walks every day, sometimes staying for multiple dogs, learning each one's personality and quirks. Maya met him for lunch when she could, and they had dinner together several times a week. He showed her his world slowly, taking her to gallery openings and charity events, but always making sure she felt comfortable, never pushing her into anything she wasn't ready for. Maya introduced him to Sophie, who pulled her aside immediately and whispered, "You didn't mention he looks like that." "I mentioned he was handsome." "Handsome is an understatement." "That man is gorgeous. Also, the way he looks at you, like you hung the moon, keep him." Meeting Alexander's family was more intimidating. His parents flew in from Seattle for a visit, and Maya was terrified. But his mother was warm and funny, immediately putting her at ease, and his father spent 20 minutes talking to her about dogs because they'd had labs growing up. Over dinner, his mother said, "We were worried about Alexander, always working, never making time for a life. I'm so glad he found you." The comment made Maya's chest feel tight with emotion and hope. But their happiness hit a snag 2 months into their relationship. Maya was walking Pepper, the nervous rescue, when she ran into her ex-boyfriend Jason. They dated for 2 years before breaking up 6 months ago, and it hadn't been particularly amicable. "Maya, hey," Jason said, stopping on the sidewalk. "Long time." "Hi, Jason." She kept walking, hoping he'd take the hint, but he fell into step beside her. "So you're still doing the dog thing, huh? I thought you'd have come to your senses by now." "I'm happy doing the dog thing. You could be making actual money, you know. Sarah got promoted. She's pulling 6 figures now." Sarah was his new girlfriend, Maya knew from mutual friends. "Good for Sarah. I'm just saying you had potential. It's a shame to waste it." Maya stopped walking and turned to face him. "My life is not a waste, Jason. Just because I don't measure success the same way you do doesn't mean I'm not successful. I'm happy, I'm supporting myself, and I'm doing work that matters to me. That's more than I had when I was with you." She walked away before he could respond, but the encounter left her shaken. All her insecurities about her choices came flooding back, and when she met Alexander for lunch, he could tell immediately that something was wrong. "Talk to me," he said, reaching across the table for her hand. She told him about running into Jason, about the things he'd said, about the doubts that had been stirred up. What if he's right? What if I'm wasting my potential? "He's not right," Alexander said firmly. "Maya, potential isn't some fixed thing you either fulfill or waste. You're living your life on your own terms, making yourself happy, bringing joy to others. How is that wasted? Because you're not making 6 figures. Money isn't the measure of a life well lived." "Says the billionaire," she said, but without heat. "Says the person who's learned that lesson the hard way." He squeezed her hand. "I've met plenty of people making 6 or 7 figures who are miserable. I've been that person. You're not wasting anything. You're building a life that makes you happy, and that's the hardest, bravest thing a person can do." His conviction helped, but Maya couldn't quite shake the encounter. Over the next week, she found herself questioning things, wondering if she should go back to marketing, if she should be doing more with her life. Alexander noticed her pulling back slightly, and it scared him. "Are you having second thoughts about us?" he asked one evening as they sat in his apartment, a space that still sometimes made Maya feel like she'd stepped into a magazine spread. "No, not about us. About me, I guess." She curled up on his couch and he sat beside her, close but not touching, waiting. "I keep thinking about what Jason said. And I know you tell me that what I do matters, but sometimes I wonder if you really believe that or if you're just being nice." "Maya, look at me." He waited until she met his eyes. "I've never been more sincere about anything in my life. What you do matters. The happiness you bring to those dogs matters. The service you provide to their owners matters. The fact that you chose a path that makes you happy matters. I'm not with you despite what you do. I'm with you in part because of it, because it shows me who you are. Someone who values joy over prestige, connection over status. Do you know how rare that is? But we're so different." "Yes, and that's good. You make me better, Maya. You remind me there's more to life than quarterly earnings and board meetings. You've made me happier in 3 months than I've been in years. If you think I'm just being nice, you really haven't been paying attention." She leaned against him and he wrapped his arms around her. "I'm scared," she admitted quietly. "Scared that I'm not enough for your world, that eventually you'll realize you could have someone more impressive." "Impossible. There is no one more impressive than you." They sat like that for a long time, and slowly, Maya felt her doubts recede. Not disappear entirely, but shrink to a manageable size. She was still figuring out how to navigate their different worlds, but she was starting to believe that maybe they could make it work. The turning point came a few weeks later. Alexander had a major business dinner, a crucial meeting with potential investors from Japan who could help expand Carmichael Industries internationally. It was the kind of event where spouses and significant others were expected to attend, and he asked Maya to come with him. "I don't know, Alexander. I don't speak Japanese. I don't know anything about sustainable energy beyond what you've told me, and I definitely don't know how to act at these things. You act like yourself. That's all I need." He cupped her face in his hands. "I know it's intimidating, but I really want you there, not as decoration or arm candy or whatever, as my partner. The person who keeps me grounded and reminds me why I'm doing all this in the first place." So Maya agreed, though she spent an entire day stressing about what to wear before Sophie dragged her shopping and helped her pick out an elegant navy dress. The dinner was at a high-end Japanese restaurant, private room, dozens of people in expensive suits talking about things Maya only half understood. Alexander introduced her to everyone, his hand steady and reassuring on the small of her back. "This is Maya Chen, my girlfriend." When people asked what she did, she took a breath and said, "I run a dog walking business." Most people smiled politely and changed the subject, but one of the Japanese investors, an older woman named Keiko, lit up. "Oh, how wonderful! I miss my dog so much when I travel. Do you have photos?" Maya pulled out her phone, showing pictures of her various clients. Keiko cooed over them, asking about each dog's personality, and soon 2 other people had joined their conversation, sharing their own dog stories. By the end of the night, Maya had exchanged contact information with 3 people who wanted recommendations for dog walkers in their own cities, and Keiko had told her, "You have a gift for connecting with others. That's the most valuable business skill there is." In the car on the way home, Alexander pulled her close. "You were perfect tonight. I talked about dogs for an hour and made genuine connections with people I've been trying to win over for months. Keiko told me before we left that she trusts me more now because I clearly have good judgment in choosing a partner." He kissed her temple. "You keep surprising me in the best ways." Maya felt something shift in her chest, a settling of the doubts that had plagued her. She'd gone into that dinner terrified of being found wanting, and she'd come out feeling like maybe she was exactly enough just as she was. Their relationship deepened after that night. Maya started spending more time at Alexander's apartment, bringing over clothes and toiletries until he cleared out drawers and closet space for her. He met her parents, enduring her mother's suspicious questions, and her father's protective scrutiny with good humor and genuine respect. By the end of the evening, her mother was showing him photo albums, and her father was discussing Taiwanese politics, and Maya knew he'd won them over. "He's good for you," her mother said later, pulling Maya aside while Alexander and her father were deep in conversation. "I was wrong about the dog walking. If it brought you to him, then it was the right choice." 6 months into their relationship, Alexander had to fly to Geneva for a conference. He asked Maya to come with him, and she hesitated only briefly before saying yes. She arranged for a colleague to cover her dog-walking clients, packed a bag, and found herself on a private jet for the first time in her life. "I could get used to this," she joked, settling into the leather seat. "Good, because I'm planning to take you lots of places." He reached for her hand. "If you want, I mean, no pressure." Geneva was beautiful, and while Alexander attended conference sessions during the day, Maya explored the city. They had dinner together each night, and he told her about panel discussions on renewable energy policy, while she told him about museums and lakeside walks. On their last night, he took her to a small restaurant overlooking the water, and as they watched the sunset, he said, "Move in with me." Maya's heart jumped. "What? Move in with me?" "I know it's fast, but I hate the nights you're not there. I hate waking up without you. My apartment is big enough for both of us, and you could even work from there if you wanted. Use one of the spare rooms as an office for your business." He was talking faster now, nervous energy radiating off him. "I'm not trying to change your life or take away your independence. I just want more of you, as much as you're willing to give." "Alexander, that's a huge step." "I know. And if you're not ready, that's okay, but I'm ready. I've been ready. I love you, Maya. I should have said it before now, but I love you and I want to build a life with you." Maya felt tears prick her eyes. "I love you too. I have for a while now." "So, is that a yes?" "It's a yes. I'll move in with you." He kissed her as the sun sank below the horizon, and Maya felt like her life was finally clicking into its proper shape. Moving in together was an adjustment. Maya was used to her tiny studio where everything had its place because there wasn't room for clutter. Alexander's apartment was enormous, and she felt lost in it at first. But slowly, she made it her own. She set up an office in one of the spare rooms, complete with a scheduling system and client files. She added plants to the living room and throw pillows to the couch. She hung photos of them together, of her dogs, of her family. Alexander loved coming home to find her there, loved the way she'd made his sterile, perfect apartment feel like an actual home. He started working from home more often, doing video calls from his home office while Maya managed her business down the hall. They'd meet for lunch in the kitchen, stealing kisses between meetings and walks. But success brought new challenges. Maya's dog walking business had grown, and she now had 3 other walkers working for her, handling more clients than she could manage alone. It was exciting and terrifying in equal measure, and she spent late nights working on schedules and marketing plans, trying to figure out how to scale without losing the personal touch that made her business special. Alexander helped where he could, offering business advice and connections, but he was careful not to overstep. This was Maya's dream, and he wanted her to achieve it on her own terms. Still, when she was stressed, he was there with comfort and support, reminding her how far she'd come. One evening, about 8 months into living together, Maya was particularly frustrated. One of her walkers had quit without notice, leaving her scrambling to cover clients. She was hunched over her laptop, trying to rearrange schedules, when Alexander appeared with a cup of tea and a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Take a break," he said softly. "I can't. I have to figure this out by tomorrow morning. You can and you will, but you need 5 minutes to breathe first." He pulled her up from the chair and guided her to the couch. "Talk to me. What's the biggest problem?" "I need another walker, but I don't have time to interview and train someone new, and I'm worried about quality control." "What if I hire someone and they're not good with the dogs? My reputation depends on consistent, excellent service. So make a checklist of what you need in a walker, non-negotiables. Then reach out to your network and see if anyone has recommendations. You could also offer a referral bonus to your current walkers if they know someone good." Maya blinked at him. "That's actually brilliant. I've hired a few people in my time," he said with a smile. "The principles are the same whether it's a dog walker or a vice president." She leaned against him, feeling the tension drain from her shoulders. "Thank you, for not trying to fix everything for me, but also for being here when I need help. That's what partners do." By their 1-year anniversary, Maya's business had stabilized with a team of 5 walkers, including herself, serving over 40 clients across the city. She was making more money than she ever had in marketing, and more importantly, she loved what she did. Alexander surprised her with a weekend trip to Napa Valley, staying at a beautiful vineyard and spending 2 days doing nothing but enjoying each other's company. On the last evening, as they sat on the terrace watching stars appear in the darkening sky, Alexander took her hand. "I have something to ask you, and I want you to really think about it before you answer." Maya's heart started to race, wondering if this was heading where she thought it might be heading. But Alexander said, "I want to start a foundation focused on supporting small business owners, especially women and minorities, giving them access to resources and mentorship and capital they might not otherwise have. And I want you to help me run it." That was not what she'd been expecting. "Alexander, I don't know anything about running a foundation, but you know what it's like to start from nothing. You know the challenges and fears and obstacles. You'd bring a perspective I don't have." He turned to face her fully. "I've been thinking about this for months. I have more money than I need, and I want to do something meaningful with it. But I don't want to be another rich guy throwing money at problems from a distance. I want to actually help people, and I think we could do that together." Maya was quiet for a long moment, turning the idea over in her mind. "I wouldn't want to give up my dog walking business entirely. You wouldn't have to. We'd hire staff to do the day-to-day work. You'd be more of a director, using your experience to guide the foundation's decisions. Can I think about it? Of course, there's no rush." But as Maya thought about it over the next few weeks, the idea grew on her. She'd struggled so much when starting her business, and the thought of helping others avoid those same struggles was appealing. She could make a real difference in people's lives, help them achieve their dreams the way she'd achieved hers. She told Alexander yes one morning as they walked Biscuit, just like they had every morning for over a year now. He spun her around and kissed her right there on the sidewalk, and Biscuit barked his approval. The foundation took 6 months to set up properly, with lawyers and accountants and endless paperwork. Maya split her time between her dog walking business and foundation work, and found that she loved the challenge of building something new. They focused on providing microloans, business mentorship, and networking opportunities to entrepreneurs who might not have access to traditional funding. Their first round of grants went to 12 small business owners, including a woman starting a catering company, a veteran opening a coffee shop, and a young man launching a tech repair service. Maya met with each one personally, offering advice and support, and found the work deeply fulfilling. Alexander watched her thrive with pride and love that grew deeper every day. She'd changed his life in ways he was still discovering, teaching him that success wasn't just about building companies and accumulating wealth. It was about connection, purpose, joy. The morning walks that had started everything had become a sacred ritual for both of them, a daily reminder of how they'd found each other. 2 years into their relationship, on a morning walk with Biscuit that felt like any other morning walk, Alexander stopped at a small park bench and pulled Maya down to sit beside him. "What's going on?" she asked, laughing at his serious expression. "I've been thinking about that first day I came down from my office to meet you. I was so nervous I almost talked myself out of it a dozen times. I'm glad you didn't. Me too. You've made me happier than I ever imagined I could be. You've made me better, Maya. More human, more connected, more alive." He slid off the bench and onto one knee, and Maya's breath caught in her throat. "I don't want to spend another day without knowing you're going to be in my life forever. Will you marry me?" He pulled out a ring, and even through her tears, Maya could see it was beautiful and perfect. A simple band with a single diamond that caught the morning light. "Yes," she managed, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, of course, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into a kiss that felt like a promise and a celebration and a beginning all at once. Biscuit, sensing the importance of the moment, barked and jumped around their legs, tail wagging furiously. They were married 6 months later in a ceremony that perfectly blended their two worlds. The venue was elegant but not ostentatious, filled with flowers and soft lighting. Maya's family sat beside Alexander's parents, and Sophie stood as maid of honor while Alexander's best friend from college served as best man. Their dog-walking clients sent a massive flower arrangement shaped like a dog bone, which made everyone laugh and made Maya cry happy tears. During his vows, Alexander said, "I fell in love with you from 23 floors up, watching you laugh while walking a dog. I fell in love with your joy, your courage, your authenticity. And every day since then, I've fallen deeper. You are my best friend, my partner, my home. I promise to support your dreams, to walk beside you through whatever comes, and to never stop waving from windows if that's what it takes to make you smile." Maya's vows were equally heartfelt. "I waved back at a stranger in a window because it seemed like a kind thing to do. I had no idea that small gesture would lead me to you. You've supported me, believed in me, and loved me exactly as I am. You've never tried to change me or make me into someone I'm not. You've just made space in your life for me to be myself. I promise to be your home the way you've been mine, to challenge you and support you, and to keep choosing you every single day." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Their honeymoon was 3 weeks in Japan, a mix of cities and countryside, culture and relaxation. They visited temples and gardens, ate incredible food, and spent hours just talking about their future. They wanted kids eventually, maybe 2 or 3. They wanted to grow the foundation, help more people achieve their dreams. They wanted to keep walking dogs together every morning, maintaining the ritual that had brought them together. Back home, they settled into married life with ease. Maya's business continued to thrive, and the foundation's second year was even more successful than the first, helping 30 small business owners get started. Alexander had stepped back from day-to-day operations at Carmichael Industries, bringing in a president to handle most of the management while he focused on strategy and vision. It gave him more time for the foundation, more time with Maya, more time for the life they were building together. One morning, about a year after their wedding, Maya woke up feeling queasy. It took her a moment to register what that might mean, and when she did, her heart started racing. She took a pregnancy test while Alexander was in the shower, and when it came back positive, she sat on the bathroom floor trying to process the news. "Maya, you okay?" Alexander's voice came from the bedroom. She walked out holding the test, unable to form words. He looked at her, then at what she was holding, and his eyes went wide. "Is that what I think it is?" She nodded, and he crossed the room in 3 long strides, pulling her into his arms. "We're having a baby." "We're having a baby," she confirmed, and they both started laughing and crying at the same time. The pregnancy was relatively smooth, and they spent 9 months preparing, turning one of the spare rooms into a nursery. Maya worked right up until her due date, still doing some dog walks and managing the foundation from home. Alexander was attentive and supportive, going to every doctor's appointment, reading pregnancy books, and generally being as involved as possible. Their daughter was born on a sunny morning in May. 8 pounds of perfect squirming baby with dark hair and her mother's eyes. They named her Lily, and Alexander cried when he held her for the first time, overcome with love and wonder. "She's perfect," he whispered, touching her tiny fingers. "She's absolutely perfect." "We made a person," Maya said, exhausted and elated. "That's kind of amazing." "You're amazing. You did all the hard work. You helped a little bit." They brought Lily home to an apartment filled with flowers and balloons and gifts from friends and family. Biscuit, now an old dog but still their favorite walking companion, sniffed the baby curiously and seemed to approve. Maya's parents came to stay for 2 weeks, helping with everything and spoiling their granddaughter shamelessly. Alexander's mother flew in as well, and the apartment was full of love and chaos and joy. Adjusting to parenthood was harder than either of them expected. The sleepless nights, the constant feeding, the worry that they were somehow doing everything wrong. But they figured it out together, taking turns with night feedings, supporting each other through the exhaustion, marveling at every tiny milestone. When Lily was 3 months old, they took her on her first walk past the Carmichael building. Alexander looked up at the 23rd floor window where he used to stand every morning, and Maya followed his gaze. "Strange to think that's where it all started," she said, adjusting the baby carrier strap to her chest. "Best decision I ever made coming down to meet you." "Second best," she corrected. "Best decision was marrying me." "You're right, that was definitely the best." They continued walking, pushing an empty stroller that they'd need once Lily got bigger, Biscuit plodding along beside them at his slow pace. The morning sun was warm, the city was waking up around them, and Maya felt a contentment so deep it was almost overwhelming. She thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago, walking dogs and feeling slightly lost, unsure if she'd made the right choices. She thought about Alexander, watching from a window, lonely despite his success. And she thought about all the small moments and decisions that had led them here, to this morning, to this life they'd built together. "I love you," she said suddenly, looking up at Alexander. He smiled, that same smile that had made her heart flutter from the very beginning. "I love you too, more than you know." Lily made a small sound from her carrier, and they both looked down at her, at this tiny person they'd created, this future they were building. And Maya realized that the story that had started with a simple wave from a window had turned into something bigger and more beautiful than she'd ever imagined possible. They walked on through the morning streets, a family now, with their old dog and new baby, heading toward whatever came next. Because that was the thing about love, Maya had learned. It didn't solve all your problems or make life perfect, but it gave you someone to walk beside, someone to face the challenges with, someone to share the joy with. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, it started with a stranger waving from a window and a decision to wave back. Years later, when Lily was old enough to ask questions, they'd tell her the story of how they met. About the morning walks and the window waves and the yellow dog named Biscuit who'd brought them together. They'd tell her about courage and choices and taking chances on happiness. They'd tell her that love could start in the most unexpected ways, but it grew through daily decisions to show up, to be present, to keep choosing each other even when things got hard. But that was still to come. For now they walked through the morning city together, exactly where they belonged.